I'm going to begin with chanting Om 3 times to open the channels of the divine. And then we'll do 108, like I was saying, of the Om Hrim, which is a bija mantra to ignite tejas and buddhi. It also clears the heart, which is the seat of the chittavritti. It's a purifying, cleansing, detoxifying bija mantra. It brings about atonement and also realignment. So my prayer always is for all of us to find alignment with the universe. And this is a good bija mantra to begin that practice. And at the end of atoning and realigning, we find spontaneous joy. This is also a bija mantra that helps us to receive the blessings of the Divine Mother, the Goddess within, both the small selves and also the larger self of the universe. And also it's just really good vibration. So we're going to begin. I'm going to go ahead and start now, even though some people may or may not still be joining. Because this will take about 10 or 15 minutes. Hari Om. Hari Om. Hari Om. Om Hrim, 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 Aum 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 Hrim. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Kayena vacha manasendriyerva udyat manava prakrute svabhavat karomi yadyat shakalam parasmai Narayanayeti samarpayami. Narayanayeti samarpayami. Shri Mahanaраянayeti samarpayami. Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwaraha, Guru Sakshat Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha, Guruve Namaha, Guruve Namaha. Om Ganapataye Namaha. Good morning, everyone, or afternoon, or greetings wherever you all are. I hope everyone is well and excited about diving deep into some Ayurveda today. So I have a huge presentation of slides and I just kind of want to let this be fluid, right? There's a lot I would like to cover. I don't know what stage everyone who is here is at in their Ayurvedic learning. So I'm going to start with basics. It may be review for a lot of you, and it may not. And so a lot of times these slides are just really for me to keep me on track because I tend to not be a naturally organized human being. I'm Leah Jones. I'm an Ayurvedic practitioner. I took 200-hour yoga teacher training with Michelle. That's how I met her. And thanks so much to Michelle for putting together this beautiful school that we can all gather together and study. So without further ado, I did want to go, so I'll go over the objectives, but I wanted to, only because we're still going through such a period right now of, this virus and political unrest, and so much is happening right now. And the beauty of Ayurveda is that the ancients already foresaw these types of things happening. And they talk about it in the ancient Ayurvedic texts in the Charak Samhita. And I really wanted to just kind of share with all of you, in case some of you don't know, that in the ancient texts, there is actually a section on epidemics, which are these widespread diseases that affect humanity. And of course, right now we're considered to be in a pandemic because it's global. But in ancient times, they would have been speaking about, a much smaller scale of environment, community, city, state, however you want to put it. So there's a whole section on it, chapter 3 in the Vimanasthana, in the Charak Samhita, and I won't read all of it, but the passages that I find very interesting, he talks about how at the onset of really environmental changes, where we start to see seasons not performing the way they normally would. For instance, we may not have a winter, we may have hurricanes at different times or more hurricanes than normal. We may have a lower growing season. All of these types of environmental changes, according to the ancient rishis, were actually signs of, oncoming epidemics. And part of the reason for that, according to them, according to the ancient rishis, was the sins of the present life or the misdeeds of the past life are at the root of the vitiation of all of these factors. And they were talking about air, water, land, pollution. Intellectual blasphemy constitutes the origin of both the types of sins. For example, when the rulers of states, towns, cities, and countries transgress the righteous path and rule their subjects by sinful means, then their subordinates and subjects inhabiting villages and cities and merchants add to this sinful situation. Their sinful acts perforce make the righteous acts disappear. Because of the disappearance of righteous acts, even the gods desert the people living in these places. Such are the places where seasons get impaired. Consequently, either there is no rain, no rainfall, or abnormality in rainfall. Air does not blow properly. Abnormality in the earth and water reservoirs get dried up. And medicines, medicinal herbs, lose their normal attributes and get impaired. Then there is impairment of the country because of the impairment of the food and water that we drink. So the beauty from also an Ayurvedic perspective is that one does not suffer from these diseases, even with all of these vitiated factors, when we practice basically yoga, truthfulness, compassion for living beings, charity, sacrifices, which we can, call as homa ceremonies, fire ceremonies, even mantras, prayers. Our meditation can be a sacrifice. Anything that we do with the intention of spreading love and goodness to the entire universe can be a sacrifice. Prayer to the gods, adoption of preventative measures, which that's exactly what Ayurveda is, a preventative modality of health. Tranquility, protection of the self by mantras, etc. Search of things as are good for the self. Residence in auspicious localities, observance of brahmacharya, service to those observing brahmacharya, discussion of religious scriptures, great sages and those who have self-control, and constant association with religious, sattvika, and learned persons. These are the therapies which, if adopted during the epidemics, can easily save the lives of individuals, provided, and this is something we'll get into further, and is a belief, a philosophical belief in both Ayurveda and yoga, provided the death of a particular individual during the period is not predestined. So because we follow and are living life in this universe, are also at the how do you want to put it, not at the mercy of karma, but we are also playing out our karmas in this life and in future and in past lives as well. So anyway, I just thought that was a really, I feel like it's important to hear, especially those of you who are, studying yoga now, practicing yoga, wanting to further your yoga studies and practices and share with people. Because right now, during this time of, the leaders of not only the United States, but of countries all over the world who have become corrupt, we're in a really transitional state right now. And it takes each individual making these changes, attempting to practice yoga, attempting to practice Ayurveda or other form of, harmonious lifestyle and medicine. It takes these kinds of things to really make changes at a foundational level so that whatever happens around us that we are not in control of, that we are in control of our own selves, that we are hopefully through our practices, sending out the energy and the good vibes that humanity needs right now, including not just humanity, but the earth and all of her plants and animals too. So moving on, and I can't see anybody, so I feel like I'm just talking to a blank screen and I'm not keeping track of the chat either. Because I think somebody else is doing that for me. So, oh, good, yay, thank you. I felt like I was just talking to thin air for a second, but that's all right. So here are the objectives, hopefully, of this week-long dive. We'll see how far we can get. I want to leave open a lot of time for question and answer every day, because I think that maybe for a lot of people, these are going to be new kind of concepts, and I want to just leave it really flowing. I want to just get where we get and have everybody feel very comfortable and participatory. I love verbal questions. I love verbal talking with people. So please feel free. And when we open up, my goal this week is to just kind of lecture for a little bit, try and get into some stuff, and then do Q&A, and then lecture some more, and then do more Q&A, because I think that just sitting here for 8 hours a day or however long it is, just listening to me drone on and on is probably not going to be very much fun. So the fun thing I think will be when we get to, we're going to do a Prakriti, Vikriti, Manasika, and Agni assessment. And I'm going to go through those question by question with all of you. I don't think we'll have time to individually go through it, but hopefully any questions that arise, I can answer and they'll be of benefit to most people, because I think a lot of the feedback that I'm getting from people at MVP as they go through these sections is really, it seems very difficult for people to fill out a dosha test and figure out A, what their dosha really is, and B, what to do once they've discovered. So we're gonna spend some time on that. Yeah, so I want to do a little history of Ayurveda, compare Ayurveda and yoga, go into Sankhya philosophy, and then get into some foundational principles of Ayurveda. We'll do the Prakriti, Vikriti, Dosha, Triguna assessments, Agni assessment, which I already said. If we have time and we think it's necessary, we'll do the Saptadhatu, which are the 7 bodily tissues, and the Sprotamansi, which are the 16 plus bodily circulatory channels. And also, if we have time, we'll get into disease pathogenesis and causes. and then spend a lot of time balancing, like figuring out how we can balance our doshas through dinacharya, ahara, ritucharya. I don't know if I'll go into the shakriyas. That was from before, and we'll see how far we get. I am alone at my house, just FYI for everyone, and I have puppies that are scratching at the door. So every few moments, I'm gonna, maybe not every few moments, but I'm gonna have to get up and let dogs out from time to time. So excuse me just a moment. Later in the week, my daughter will be home, so she'll be able to do that, but I apologize.
Hey Leah, Anna Pilar here. We do have a question in the chat about what specific text you were reading from.
Oh, I'm reading from the Charak Samhit, which is one of the 3 main ancient texts of Ayurveda. The Charak Samhit Samhit is a compilation of sutras compiled by, I was going to get into that in the origins of Ayurveda, but that's the textbook that it's not really a textbook, it is the classical, it's considered, the Ayurvedic texts are considered kind of Upavedas of Arthava Veda, which are the ancient Vedas of India. And so it's not really a textbook, it's more just like this compilation of information that was passed down originally from the creator of the universe, Lord Brahma, and followed, suit all the way down to the rishis of ancient India, and they compiled all of this information into these books that we still have today, and that most Ayurvedic schools, at least for myself, follow completely in their studies. So what is Ayurveda? I wanted to do this slide especially just because I want to say it's based on 2 words, Ayur and Veda, and it's not Arya Veda, it's Ayurveda. That is the proper pronunciation of Ayurveda. I don't know where, I hear so many people say Ayurveda, and I'm not sure where that came from. It's been very popular for a very long time, but I know that my teacher, when I first started, she's from India, and that was one of her main complaints, was that everybody misspelled the word from the get-go. So, or I mean mispronounced rather. And to be fair, I don't have, proper or correct pronunciation of a lot of Sanskrit words, but this one I've practiced a lot because I say it a lot. So it is Ayurveda. And what is Ayurveda? So this is what we're going to get into. So according to Charak Sutrastan, Ayurveda is the science of life. I'm going to read directly from the text for a lot of these because I think they're so well written, and I didn't want to just copy. I didn't feel like copying these constantly into slides. So the definition of Ayurveda, according to Charak Samhit Sutrastan, the science which imparts knowledge about life with special reference to its definition and the description of happy and unhappy life, useful and harmful life, long and short spans of life, and such other material along with their properties and actions as promote and demote longevity will be described in the entire treatise. So what does that really mean? It means that this is a science of living, how we live a healthy life, the things we do to promote that health, the things we do to negate that health, and having an understanding of those things, right? So it's not about judging how we're living our life. It's not about you're doing it right, you're doing it wrong. It's really about understanding the things that we are doing that may be creating disease, imbalance, discomfort, unhappiness in our life, and then the things that we can do to promote the opposite of those, the happiness, the balance, the health, the energy, all of those things. In chapter 30, 25 through 26, it says that the utility of this science is to help maintain the health of a healthy individual and cure the diseases of an unhealthy individual. So those are kind of the main things when I was studying Ayurveda that my teacher really kind of drilled into us. What is the goal of studying Ayurveda? It is really to help maintain your health. So it's preventative, it's keeping you in a state of health, but it's also there to cure any imbalances that may arise from the doshas or from the environment or from karma or from, you know, the world that we're living in right now. The eternity of Ayurveda. So Ayurveda, or the science of life, is eternal because of the following. It has no beginning, right? So we can go, I'll go into some slides that are kind of the origins of Ayurveda. And a lot of people like to say that Ayurveda is this, you know, Indian holistic medicine that was created about 5,000 to 10,000 years ago. But the truth of the matter is that Ayurveda, as a science of living in harmony, how can that be created? Who invented that? How is there an invention or an origin of living in harmony? The truth is that, you know, when you're in a state of harmony, you know what is right to take in, what is right to let go of. And these ancient rishis, you know, they were living in such a state of balance and communication and unity with the universe that they understood the properties and the qualities of the elements and how they played within the body. And they were able to, out of their beneficence, share that with us. And we wrote it down. And so at a certain point, all of this was written down before it was just shared Guru Parampara, which is just, you know, verbally from guru to disciple for, you know, eons. And then eventually it was written down. However, that doesn't denote just the writing of it, that it was actually ever created. It is just the science of living in harmony. It deals with such things that are inherent in nature, and such natural manifestations are eternal. There is no discontinuity either in the living process or in the knowledge of things. Yeah. Living beings who are in know of the various factors relating to the science of life are also eternal. The knowledge of happiness, good health, unhappiness, or ill health, along with their etiology, symptomology, and therapeutics, has a continuity and is without any beginning. This is what is described in the Ayurveda. So I thought this was a really beautiful translation of Sutra 142. Ayurveda, meaning the science of life, sees us as four-dimensional complex entities comprised of a body, sharira, senses, indriya, mind, sattva, and soul, atma. Since atma is considered unchanging, we can say that it is only when grouped together that they are considered as ayus, which is life, a continuum of infinite consciousness going through a specific experience. So, Sutra 142 indeed says the term ayus stands for the combination of body, sense organs, mind, and soul. Its synonyms, oh, hang on just a moment, I have to let the puppy back in. Okay. So when I was going over that, I was thinking you yogis would appreciate that this definition of life according to Ayurveda sounds very much like the kosha system, no? Right? We've got a body, we have the senses, we have the bliss, the soul, we have all of these in conjunction. So Ayurveda is not just a physical treatment, it is also treating all of these panchakoshas just the same way yoga is. And in my experience, Ayurveda and yoga are people like to say sister sciences, say whatever you want if that's what calls to you. But to me, Ayurveda is a yoga. It's not different. It's not a separate sister science that you can do instead of. If you are practicing Ayurveda, to me, you are practicing yoga because you are practicing dealing with the unity of the self, the high self, Atma, with this physical manifestation of Maya, illusion of the body and the environment around us. So I thought you guys would appreciate the connection of the actual definition, according to Ayurveda, of what life is very in line with the kosha system. So I've just read Sutrastan, combination of body, sense organs, mind, and soul. It is synonymous with the synonyms of this term, ayus, are dadi, jivita, nityaga, and anubandha. So dadi is this, the soul, basically, or this energy that is imbibed with us, the prana, if you will. It's one of the pranas that prevents the body from decay. Jivata, like the soul, like the jivatman, is what keeps this body alive. Nityaga is this permanent substratum of the body, which is constantly in motion and ephemeral, right? So the soul is living within inside of something that is in constant flux, right? The doshas, the elements within inside of us, we are born, we are growing, we are, eating, we are absorbing, we're assimilating, we're releasing what we don't need. It's in constant motion, just like the universe around us is in constant motion, changing. Parts of it are dying, parts of it are renewing. Just our bodies are the exact same thing. And they are ephemeral. The body part of it is, right? So this life of Leah is ephemeral. Leah will not exist forever. Leah is just a blip in a moment of time. But the inhabitant, the causation, if you will, of Leah is eternal and will continue, is on a continuum. And this anubandh will transmigrate from one body to another, according to Ayurveda and yoga, for many lifetimes, possibly, depending upon, your level of evolution within each life and your level of consciousness as you go from life to life to life. So in Sutrastan 30:22, they talk about the continuation of consciousness, which we kind of already went over, but I just want to read this anyway. So after instructions about the Vedas, various aspects of the lifespan are to be described. Lifespan is nothing but the continuation of consciousness, the act of keeping alive, anubandha, and dadi, which prevents the body from decay. So it's just this continuation, right? There's no end. There's not really any beginning. All of these points in life, birth, death, all the in-betweens, all the highs and lows that we experience in a body, outside of the body, these are all just on a continuum. And Ayurveda recognizes that. And in that recognition, we strive to act accordingly and understand the physical body from that perspective, as more than just a physical body, as having, lifetimes of samskaras and experiences that we may be in this moment playing out, experiencing, having the results of. And that can affect our health, that affects the doshas, how the elements play with inside of us. There's so much that it affects according to Ayurveda. And according to Ayurveda, there are 4 types of life. So we've just talked about kind of the definition of life according to Ayurveda. In Charak Samhit Sutrastan 141, we talk about the 4 types of life, which are Hitayu. Get to that page, hang on just a second. That science is designated as Ayurveda, where advantageous and disadvantageous, as well as happy and unhappy states of life, along with what is good and bad for life, its measurement, and life itself, are described. So, Hitayu, a useful or advantageous life; Ahitayu, harmful or disadvantageous; Sukha, happy; and Dukkha, unhappy or miserable. So these are the 4 types of life that a person may find themselves in a state of maybe predominantly throughout their life. Maybe we fluctuate different times throughout our life. Obviously, we can see what the goals are, but we may have been born into a situation where we're really in a state of suffering, or we may know people who have been born into a life that are in an extreme state of suffering. Dukkhayu, especially disturbed mental and physical state, negative karma accumulation. And this can arise as a result of harming the balance of nature, environment, and other entities, and or it may manifest as that for the individual, depending upon, the experience that they're having at that moment. Sukhayu, good health with a sound body and mind, life with comforts, partial consideration to nature is expressed and experienced in this individual. Ahitayu is someone who is living a more self-absorbed life, not living in harmony with nature, other entities, and the environment. And this kind of goes back to when I was first quoting about the epidemics. To me, when we're talking about a righteous life versus an unrighteous life, I'm not really talking about, judging the way people live, but there are certain considerations that people make, right, based on living in harmony with other human beings, animals, plants, the environment that you're in. And if you're not, making decisions that are in harmony with that, if you're going against that, then, from an Ayurvedic and yogic perspective, that would be considered an unrighteous or disharmonious life. Of course, the goal is Hitayu, which is a life with righteous living, truthfulness, and living in complete harmony with nature. The way my teachers described Hitayu is, like these ancient rishis, or some of our, blessed teachers that we do thankfully have living on the planet right now. But for most of us, the best we can do at any given moment is Sukhayu. And this is because if you think about it, I'm still driving a car, right? I'm still going against the laws of nature in a lot of ways, even though I would wish in a perfect world I could live somewhere that I didn't have to drive anywhere, get on the road, use gas, never use plastic, never, never waste anything. Like that would be my hope and prayer to someday achieve that. But I am definitely not at that point. And so I consider myself, for the most part, to be attempting to practice number 3, which is Sukhayu, which is good health. I practice Ayurveda, I practice yoga. I still like to eat a lot of sweets, maybe above and beyond what is, balanced for me. But in general, I know what's good for me. I enjoy eating what's well for me. I like to be comfortable, for sure. I'm not living in a state of discomfort and like poverty. And by poverty, I don't mean poor. I mean like a state where you don't have your basic needs met, right? I have my basic needs met. And when we say partial consideration to nature, I mean, that is true. At the end of the day, if we are doing certain things, we don't have complete consideration to nature. I would like to believe that that I try and make most decisions with that thought in mind. But in all honesty, I fill up my trash can just like the rest of the people do. I use plastic, and I have animals that require things that are maybe against harmony and balance of nature. So I mean, there's a lot of daily living that we do, even with the desire to be in perfect harmony, that this modern society is kind of, and I'm not in any way like trying to just shuck off the blame or anything, but modern society kind of makes it very hard to live in complete harmony. We have a lot of things that are actively working against that desire within inside of us. And it's not to say that we can't, and it's not to say that we shouldn't continue striving, and it's also not to say that modern society isn't of benefit in many ways. But my Guruji talks about, modernization as being one of the causative factors for disease and unhealth and unhappiness in the world. So it's something to think about, all of our comforts, all of the things that we can do, all of our availabilities, right? All of the myriad things we can eat, activities we can do, places we can visit, things we can have in our home. All of these things, A, are they really necessary? And B, is it living in as harmonious of a way as we possibly can? Or would simplifying to the bare nothing really be, the goal, right? So maybe not in this lifetime, but we can work towards this. We can start having the intention of continuing to work towards Hitayu. And at some point in time, I mean, we all are living in the birth that we're living in as a result of past karma, right? So if we take with us this intention, maybe we can be born into a family where that is, the next time where that is a more available to us, living more of a hitayu in harmony with the environment, with the universe, which is really the goal of Ayurveda. So does anybody have any questions? No? Okay. I will keep going. So the history and lineage of Ayurveda, we've already kind of talked of the eternity of it. But according to Charak Samhit and the ancient Vedas and my teachers and everyone, the originator of this knowledge was Brahma, who we consider the creator of the universe. He passed this directly down to his children, Daksha, Prajapati, who passed it to the Ashvins, which were these celestial physicians. The Ashvini twins are these celestial physicians who shared it with with Indra, the Lord of heaven. And there's a story of the churning of the ocean of milk between the Asuras and the Devas. And that story is long-winded. The Asuras had done something to the Devas, and the Devas asked Lord Vishnu to help them. And anyhow, I don't really know the whole story by heart, but they got into this. Actually, Anna Pilar might know this whole story. I know she's got a lot of really good historical knowledge of all of these things. But at the end of the churning of the ocean, one of the last things to come out was Lord Dhanvantari, who is the Lord of medicine according to Ayurveda, and he was holding this pot of ambrosia, which is this amrit, this nectar of the gods that is, the proponent of longevity, health and well-being and life. And then at a certain point, this knowledge passed down to humankind as a result of, rishis during this time really praying and desiring from the bottom of their hearts to be able to help humanity, to be able to help people in states of disease, discomfort, disharmony. They were really wanting to have an answer to be able to share with humanity, to help humanity be the best they could be. So in Charak Samhit, verses chapter 1, 3 through 4, they talk about this in a really beautiful way. Let's see if I can find it. There's a lot of commentary. Yeah, here we go. So I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to pronounce his name right, but Bharadvaja, the ascetic of eminence, desirous of long life, having known about Indra, approached Indra, the Lord of immortals and protectors of devotees. Daksha got the Ayurveda as propounded by Lord Brahma. From the former, the Ashvins got it in its entirety, and Indra got the whole of it from the Ashvins. So as directed by sages, Bharadvaja approached Lord Indra. At the advent of the diseases which were impediments to long life, religious vows, brahmacharya, sacred studies, and relating to human beings, the sages, the followers of Yama and Niyama, illuminated with the brilliance of penance, fires with offerings of ghee, as it were, all with virtuous acts, sitting together comfortably on the auspicious valley of the Himalayas, full of compassion for all creatures, discussed this sacred topic. And then it goes into all of the sages that were there during this time. The big one for the study of Ayurveda is Atreya Punarvasu. He is the one that we consider to be the original expounder of what we have in the Charak Samhit, and he shared it with his student or his disciple Agnivesha, who there were other obviously disciples of Atreya Punarvasu, but Agnivesha was considered to be his preeminent disciple, and he wrote the Agnivesha Samhita, which was propounded to be lost for many generations. And then sage Charak was the one who supposedly found the Agnivesha Tantra. It was missing 40 chapters, which were then shared to him by Lord Shiva. And so then he wrote down the Charak Samhit, which is Agnivesha's Tantra plus the missing 40 chapters that he wasn't able to find. And we also say in Ayurveda that the origins are from the Artava Veda, which are one of the four ancient texts of Indian philosophy. So in Charak Samhita Sutristan 30, 20, 21, they actually talk about the origins coming from, again, the question arises as to which of the four Rig, Shaman, Yayur, and Artava Vedas do the scholars of Ayurveda follow? What is the lifespan? Why is it called Ayurveda? What is the object of Ayurveda? Is it eternal or ephemeral? What are its branches and how many are they? And who are eligible to study it and what for? Of the four Vedas, physicians owe their loyalty to the Artava Veda because this deals with the treatment of diseases by taking recourse to gift, propitiatory rites, worship, auspicious observances, oblations, observance of spiritual rules, atonement, fasting, incantations, etc. And they are prescribed for the sake of longevity. So those are the history and lineage of Ayurveda according to the ancient texts. So why do we study Ayurveda if we're studying yoga and vice versa? I came to Ayurveda maybe a little bit differently than a lot of people did. I actually studied Ayurveda before I studied yoga, and Ayurveda is actually what led me to further study in yoga. But to me, Ayurveda, as I've already said, is a yoga. And so it really was the first study that I recognized, this philosophy of yoga, of the self, as a part of this greater whole, the Jivatma and Paramatma, was really explained to me in Ayurveda. So Ayurveda is really this concept of living in harmony with nature and our higher self. And it really is very clear and precise in a way to live so that you're not deviating from the path of yoga, right? It's very intuitive, it's harmonious, it's really about knowing yourself, because at the end of the day, we can talk about, the different types of life and the different things that affect health and disease and all of that, but it is also very unique to everyone. We're all having a very unique experience. We have unique bodies, we have unique lives, we have unique, psychologies, relationships, jobs, all of this stuff. So to me, the practice and the study of Ayurveda and yoga is really about knowing yourself, right? Your true self, but also this self that is, encased in this physical body of Leah. What's making Leah tick? What are the things that she can and cannot abide? What are the things that she needs to work on and that she, has or has not recognized yet? What are the things that bring her joy? What are the things that bring her sorrow? Why can she not find balance? These are the things that we have to really recognize within ourselves that are going to be very unique and different for everyone. There's no set way or set belief system or set practice that will have the same exact results for every person. So yoga is the science of self-realization, and Ayurveda is the science of self-healing for the purpose of self-realization. It's not separate, right? We still have these bodies. We still have Annamaya Kosha. We do still have to deal with the physical body. And even the asanas of yoga are very much a part of that. The yamas and niyamas are very much a part of dealing with the Annamaya Kosha. So Ayurveda is really just the practice of making sure that this part of us is also balanced so that we can go to higher states, higher koshas, operate from the higher chakra system, operate from more of a place of equanimity, because when the physical body is limited or in a state of suffering, of course those higher states of being are more difficult to attain. Not that they're impossible to attain, within a physical body that is suffering, but that they may be more hard to attain as a result of a suffering physical body. Both Ayurveda and yoga have practices that are to, preserve and generate prana, right? So the prana within inside of us, we don't have a limited quantity of that. We actually do have an unlimited quantity of prana if we allow ourselves to open and expand to universal prana, Maha Ishwaran, the universal prana. And when we are operating from that connectivity, from that place of unity instead of our own separate little selves, then we are able to preserve and generate prana as needed for the energy that we need in this limited form to do what we need to do to play out our swadharma in this life. So prana is this life force. You guys know what prana is. It is the healing power of Ayurveda, right? It is our buddhi, our intelligence of yoga, and it provides both energy and, sustenance to be able to pursue yoga, the practice of yoga, right? So this is my big slide because I've already said it 15 times, but I really do believe Ayurveda is a yoga. So when you look at, the 8 limbs of yoga as compiled by Patanjali, the yamas, niyamas, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, samadhi. Ayurveda is part of all of these, right? When we are practicing the yamas, we are practicing right life. We are trying to attain hitayu when we are practicing ahimsa, when we are practicing brahmacharya, when we are practicing asteya, non-stealing, non-greed, all of these things. When we are practicing the yamas, we are attempting to practice hitayu. Okay? Same thing with the niyamas, especially with swadhyaya and swadhyaya, because of the practice of dinacharya from an Ayurvedic perspective. Excuse me. So especially swadhyaya, because from an Ayurvedic perspective, we need to know ourselves, right? So we need to have that self-introspection, that self-study, to actually understand what works for me, what works for you, how the elements are playing inside of me, how I'm affected by my environment, the food that I eat, the relationships that I have, the job that I'm doing, my daily activities, how are those affecting me? And that takes somebody who is really practicing swadhyaya, who is really paying attention to themselves. And when you're not, and you're just floating around, then you're oftentimes unconsciously making decisions that are creating an imbalance that you don't have a recognition of where that's coming from. So Ayurveda is very much a practice of swadhyaya. Our practice of dinacharya, our daily routine, includes the practices from niyamas of saucha, which is purification of the body, of Annamaya kosha, but also of the subtle body too, right? We're cleansing the senses, which are cleansing Manomaya kosha, Pranamaya kosha, Vijnanamaya kosha. When we're cleansing those subtle aspects of the body so that we can clearly see what we're taking in and clearly hear what's happening around us and clearly taste the food that we're eating, those sense perceptions are working at not only a physical level, but at such a subtle level that if we're not practicing purity from in the tanmatras, then we're perverting those kosha layers in our own bodies. And then, of course, the practice of tapas is very much so a practice of Ayurveda, the discipline to do our dinacharya, to do self-study, to practice the yamas and niyamas and asana, to practice pranayama, which is one of the best forms of tapas, pranayama. The highest form of tapas, really, to always be watching the breath, sitting in the moments between breath. This is one of the highest, or the highest form of tapas, according to one of my teachers. So of course, asana is also a practice of Ayurveda, because we use asana to balance the gunas, which we can talk about the three gunas, sattva, raja, and tamas, or even just the qualities of the elements within inside of us. You know, vata, pitta, and kapha need to be balanced through asana practice as well. Brahmana and Langana, these tonification and removal therapies within asana practice, in pranayama practice, these also are things that we use in Ayurveda to treat or to keep in balance the doshas, right? So we will sometimes say somebody with more of a vata dosha with certain gunas may need more of a brahmana pranayama and asana practice, right? They may need more building, nourishing, stabilizing, sustaining practices rather than the removing practices of asana and pranayama. Ayurveda very much believes in pratyahar, which can be another translation or another way of looking at it, the proper use of the sense perceptions, right? So in pratyahar, we're turning them inside. And from an Ayurvedic perspective, we're keeping them so purified and so clean. And we're using them in such a way that there's always the double pointed awareness happening, right? I'm seeing out in front of me, but I'm also turned inside, antarkarana, right? I'm also watching who is seeing out here, who is talking. So that is very much a practice of Ayurveda and a belief system of Ayurveda, that when we don't utilize the tanmatras properly or take proper care of them, or, you know, overuse, wrong use, all of that stuff, which I will get into more later, but that can be a causative factor actually of disease with it from an Ayurvedic perspective. So, and then dharana, we believe that this concentration really helps to recognize and open up our ability to live a more dharmic life, and allows us to practice our own swadharma, which is, you know, the reason that I took birth this time, that you guys took birth this time. In that state of dharana, when we achieve that state, those truths can be revealed to us. And then, of course, the practices of dhyan and samadhi. One of the goals of Ayurveda is obviously moksha, and through the practice of dhyan and samadhi, we are achieving one of the goals of Ayurveda. So to me, I hope you guys can see that Ayurveda really is a yoga. It's not any different. It's the same thing. It's a sister science, and Ayurveda says this and yoga says that, but it's not the same thing. It is actually the same thing. There is actually no difference. And if you're attempting to practice one, you're probably practicing the other without even knowing it, and vice versa. So just join the two. Let's not be so so exclusive with Ayurveda and yoga. Let's be inclusive. Let's let Ayurveda be a yoga. Let's be happy to share and realize that they're all have the same goal, and we're all trying to achieve the same things. And some people may, just as in yoga, some people may enjoy the asana more than they enjoy the pranayama or something like that. It's all, we're all called to practice different aspects of these ancient techniques and belief systems and philosophies according to, again, our own karma, our own doshas, our own swadharma in this lifetime. And none of it's wrong or better. It's just very unique to the individual. So I love that. I think we're all practicing and trying the best we can. So we use Ayurveda as an assessment tool. And, you know, the one thing that I have to say that maybe I should have said at the beginning of this class is that I don't know what you guys as yoga teachers are really going to be able to do as far as like, um, diagnosing or treating others using Ayurveda. But what my hope is from this study that we'll be doing this week is that you'll learn enough about these elements and some of these Ayurvedic principles that when you're designing a class, or if you have private clients, or just for yourselves and your family members and friends or whatever, that you can kind of start to see some Ayurvedic principles that may be of benefit to people. And I know that you're not allowed to go out and like actually tell somebody you're a pitta and you need to take, this diet, this herb, this practice based from an Ayurvedic perspective. But you might be able to see your client and know inside, oh, there's a lot of pitta fire there going on. I'm not going to design a class or a protocol, a yogic, which again, we're like, diversifying between Ayurveda and yoga, even though they're the same. But anyway, you're not going to design a yogic protocol that would be out of alignment with what you're seeing from an Ayurvedic perspective. Does that make sense? I hope. So we use Ayurveda as an assessment tool for people. It's a lifestyle practice. We definitely use diet and herbs, dinacharya, which is your daily routine and practice of cleansing the senses. We use the shatkarmas or kriyas, and panchakarma is our really big detoxification and rejuvenation practice, which you guys won't be doing, but they are therapies that are meant to alleviate disease that has settled deep within the tissues. And, they include, pancha is 5, as you guys know, they include these 5 actions that once we go through the preparatory stage, we do these 5 actions that then eliminate this disease or the doshas from deep within the tissue. And then we have this rasayana, this after stage of panchakarma that is meant to bring balance back to the body and the digestive system, Agni. So panchakarma is really an amazing detoxification. And I've talked a lot during office hours and with some other students of MVP about like these at-home panchakarmas that you can do. They're not really panchakarma because you're not doing all 5 actions when you do the at home, but it's an Ayurvedic at home detoxification, which is pretty safe and good to do at the junction of the seasons. But panchakarma is a pretty intense and specific practice that takes really the use of a clinic and an Ayurvedic Vaidya that knows how to do all of these activities, which are, I'll just let you guys know so that I'm not trying to keep anything a secret. It's Rakta Moksha is bloodletting, Nasya, which is the oiling of the nose, and that removes impurities from the head. The Rakta Moksha removes impurities from the blood. And then Vamana, which is emesis, throwing up, removes impurities from the stomach and the lungs and the ear, nose, and throat area. There's Varechana, which is purgation, which removes impurities from the small intestine, and then Basti, which is retention enema, which removes impurities from the colon or the large intestine. So some people will go through all 5 of those at a clinic, depending upon the strength or, the bala, the age, the disease of the person. Some people will just go through 1 or a couple of those. When you're doing your at-home detoxification, most commonly people are doing Varechana, which is purgation from the small intestine, and Basti, which is the cleansing, the retention of oil or tea decoction in the colon, which removes impurities but also nourishes that intestinal lining. And then the preparatory measures for that are internal and external oleation, as well as a specific diet and enkindling Agni Deepen, and Amapachan, which removes impurities or toxins from the body. So those are preparatory measures of panchakarma. So really, from an Ayurvedic perspective, when we're practicing our daily routine, when we're eating according to our dosha and the seasons, when we're keeping our Agni strong, and when we're practicing things like daily pranayama techniques and asana techniques, we're really kind of doing daily PK, because PK is really meant to cleanse not only these major physical channels of the body and the tissue systems of the body, but it's also meant to cleanse all the minute channels, all the nadis within the body. And so one of my teachers says that even just the practice of Kapalabhati on a daily basis is like a daily PK. It's like you're daily cleansing all of the channels of the body through the practice of Kapalabhati. So, so there are things we can do without going to, an Ayurvedic clinic that can help cleanse and detoxify the physical body. And then we use Marma Chikitsa to also balance these channels and these tissue systems, the doshas, Agni, organ systems of the body, as well as the more subtle layers of the body as well. Marma points are locations that are on the physical body, that are junctions of actual physical tissue, like muscle, bone, tendons, vessels, but they're also junctions of prana, soma, and tejas. So there are these really energetic points along the body that, when stimulated a certain way, and of course, that will depend on your dosha, that will depend on the current imbalance you have, but they're used as either tools to diagnose an imbalance or to balance an imbalance through the practice of like oiling the area, or aromatherapy, or gem therapy, or other more specific treatments of these vital marmas on the body. So some of the main Ayurvedic principles that I think it's really important for people to grasp is this theory of the macrocosm and the microcosm, the theory of similar and dissimilar, like increases like, and the opposite will decrease. Ojas, tejas, and prana are very important to understand. I'm going to go into all of these a little bit deeper in later slides. I'm just kind of covering what these main principles are. And then the three pillars of health, according to Ayurveda, are nidra, ahara, and brahmacharya, which are sleep, food, and the right use of energy or celibacy. So these fundamental theories of the theory of macrocosm and microcosm. So according to Ayurveda, everything that exists in the vast universe also appears in the internal cosmos of a living body, right? So inside of us is every star system and galaxy and planet, every element that is in the entire universe and on this whole world. Every one of us has all of those things within inside of us, right? We're no different than this universe. We're no different than the trees. We're no different than the animals. They all have these elements and these energies in, to be sure, manifesting in different ways, but we all have these same elements within us. And so with this understanding of similarity and continuity and unity with the entire universe, this is how we approach practicing Ayurveda. we're no different than the universe. We're affected by the universe because we are the universe. We're affected by the seasons because we are the seasons, right? We are going through the seasons and the cycles of life. We're aging. We're going through, intense hot summers that are, very, very purging, very purifying, very difficult to go through. We are experiencing it and we are it, right? We're not separate from it. So that's a fundamental theory according to Ayurveda. And then this theory of similar and dissimilar. The similar is the cause of the increase of all things at all times. And the dissimilar or opposite is the cause of their decrease. So the microcosm are dependent upon the macrocosm to maintain itself selectively by allowing entry of certain substances, either similar or dissimilar in nature. So very much in an Ayurvedic practice, we do the things to balance the elements within inside of us that will bring balance. And we know that if we want to increase something, we add more of it. If we want to decrease it, we add opposite qualities of it. That's huge. And I think that if anything, that would be the biggest takeaway I hope you guys get from that. Once you kind of understand yourselves, you will know what to bring in. I don't have to tell you, and you don't have to go see somebody. You will know what you need to bring in. I'm feeling the qualities of dry. I'm feeling the qualities of anxiety. I'm feeling the qualities of fear. I'm feeling the qualities of constipation, right? Oh, Vata's out of balance. What do you need to balance Vata? Not more Vata. Not more activity, not more dry foods, not more dry, or removing practices, Langana therapies. We need more nourishing, more building, more earth element, more water element. So once you kind of understand that we balance these elements by the opposites, not by the similars. Okay, so that's one thing that I will say also, that it seems some people have a harder time recognizing, and hopefully with this presentation, when we get into the gunas, which are the 10 opposing qualities from an Ayurvedic perspective, you'll kind of start to see those qualities within inside of yourself, right? You'll start to see, when skin is dry, when skin is over moist, when digestion is feeling, a little bit hot or a little bit slow. You'll start to recognize these qualities, and then you can do the things that you need to do to balance those qualities, those gunas within inside of you. So does anybody have any questions so far?
I do have a question. It pertains to this, but it's a little bit off topic.
Okay.
I was just wondering, what is the best resource to figure out your dosha? Because I've went on a couple different ones, and my results, they're pretty similar, but they're always different. So I was wondering, what do you recommend?
Well, first, it's important to understand that the doshas are always in flux. So if you're constantly, every time you do a dosha test, if you're answering it from the state you're in right now, it will probably be different each time you do it. The doshas, the elements are not static within inside any of us. They are constantly in motion. And because we are these microcosms, we are affected by what's happening in the world around us at all times. Okay?
Right.
So the best thing to try and understand is what your prakriti is, which I'll get into. And then once you understand what your natural state is, then you can kind of tell whether or not you're in a state of imbalance or if you're just in your normal state. You know, your pitta is normally going to be higher than vata or kapha. If that's your normal state, then you'll understand what you need to do to keep that just kind of in a state of balance. If you don't know what your natural state is, then that could be kind of a problem because you may be trying to treat a situation that maybe or may not be normal. So dosha tests, I'm going to go over those later in the slide. I actually have some from Dr. Ladd's Institute. He has on his website, ayurveda.com, he has a prakriti test and a vikriti test, and I'm going to do that with all of you actually in this class, in this presentation.
Perfect.
Yeah, and if you have, you know, a chance ever to go see an Ayurvedic practitioner, that's one of the best ways, obviously, to find out what your prakriti is, because they would probably do pulse assessment on you and do some other more intense questioning that would help you to have maybe a greater understanding of what your natural state is.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Sure. Yes. Any other questions? I saw in the chat that somebody says they're taking the Ayurvedic practitioner program and we're taught the same, that Ayurveda is yoga and that they are not separate. And I just want to say I'm really happy to hear that because I hear a lot in the yoga community that Ayurveda is like this different thing, and it's, you know, and they believe a different thing and they practice a different thing and all of that. And it really isn't, you know, my experience or my understanding of what Ayurveda is. And you're also adjusting yoga and pranayama according to your dosha, and it's really been amazing. So that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, Kelsey. Okay. So it's 10:30. So we're just going to keep going, I guess, till noon and see how far we can go. According to Ayurveda, there are 4 main goals, purushkarthas, in life. These are dharma, artha, kama, moksha, anam, arogyam, mulam, uttamam. So dharma, artha, kama, moksha are the 4 goals, and they are practiced to achieve health, or they are the goals that that you can achieve when you're in a state of health, and they are the goals that are difficult to achieve when you're not in a state of health. So I'm going to actually go to Charak Sutrastan 115 to read exactly what they're talking about here. Good health stands at the very root of virtuous acts, dharma, acquirement of wealth, artha, gratification of desire, kama, and final emancipation, moksha. So good health stands at the very root of these 4 Vedic goals of life. This has manifested itself as a great obstacle. Diseases are destroyers of health, well-being, and life. This has manifested itself as a great obstacle in the way of human life. What could be its remedy? With this end in view, the rishis entered into meditation. Then, in their vision, they found a savior in Lord Indra and got assurance to the effect that he, the Lord of the gods, would explain the proper way to counteracting disease. So dharma is associated with, of course, the soul, the Atman itself, which is to be inferred from the results. So when we are practicing good health, it is as a result of following a righteous or moral path according to the yamas and niyamas. Dharma refers to this law of truth that governs the universe, the underlying principles that keep all things in harmony. Dharmic living gives us health, happiness, inner peace, allowing us to pursue spiritual practices of yoga. Adharmic living, which is the opposite of dharmic living, brings pain, disharmony, constricts our consciousness, and brings us into a dark mind. Artha, which is a goal of achieving prosperity and wealth, is whatever activity, physical or material, a person needs to support life is considered artha, right? It's not necessarily more than that. And of course, we're all living the life based on our own karma, based on our own qualities, and achieving whatever states of prosperity and wealth, not just material prosperity and wealth, of course, but emotional prosperity and wealth, physical prosperity and wealth. All of those things are also considered to be artha. The means of achieving the goal of artha must have a righteous or moral basis, based on dharma, right? Based on a righteous life of yamas and niyamas. So kama is this fulfillment of enjoying and happiness that comes from fulfillment of desires of the mind and the sense organs. The fulfillment of these desires in the world, the pursuit of happiness and pleasure, is kama. And we all need to be able to do that, right? I mean, truthfully, none of us would even be here if we didn't have some form of desire. We wouldn't actually be in existence if we didn't have desire. So there's nothing wrong with having desire, and there's nothing wrong with the pursuit of fulfilling those desires, as long as we are very clear and conscious from an Ayurvedic perspective about what those are. I mean, obviously, a desire to, harm others or to, take more than what you need and stuff like that aren't recommended. It's just really about pursuing joy and happiness, right? We want people, we want humanity to be in a state of happiness. We want humanity to be in a state of love and compassion and all of those things. And if we feel for whatever reason that we're not able to achieve the desires that we feel would bring us there, then we're not in that state, and that can be a causative factor for imbalance within a human being. And then, of course, the goal of all of Ayurveda, yoga, everything is moksha, which is reaching liberation spiritually and becoming unique in union with God, Ishvara, Pranidhan, right? Completely free from attachment, expectations, and desires. Freedom from the cycles of birth and death, so that we are free to experience divinity and happiness. Although my understanding is once you've achieved moksha, you're not really in an experience of divine happiness. You are the divine happiness. You're not experiencing it as a separate being. You actually are it, and there is nothing more. So those are the Purusharthas, the goals of life that are based on, good health, and that diseases would be in direct opposition to achieving these goals of life. So that's one of the reasons that Ayurveda recognizes these, is that we recognize these as a necessity for health and well-being and a full cycle of life, right? We're born, we live, we achieve, we develop, we evolve, and we cycle out of this body. And it's this whole full thing. And Ayurveda wouldn't want anyone to be born and not be able to achieve this full cycle, because in that unattainment of the full cycle of life creates suffering and more desire, and a reason for rebirth, which is probably going to happen and has happened many, many times. But the goal is to break out of that cycle of birth and death that we are in right now. So Dharma, karma, and health. Dharma are the laws of truth which govern the universe. We've already talked about. Your swadharma relates to your individual karma and your prakriti from an Ayurvedic perspective, and your personal. So there's always going to be universal dharma, universal prana, and also there's the individual soul, individual prana, individual dharma. And so swadharma really relates to your individual karma, dharma, and prakriti, what you're set forth to do in this particular body, place, time, family, so on and so forth. So yoga uses dharmic methods to harness cosmic prana, and Ayurveda is actually dharmic medicine. So it is medicine that is meant to be in complete harmony with the laws of truth that govern the entire universe. We believe that most mental and emotional disorders are rooted in adharmic living. So your daily sadhanas, performed diligently and disciplined in awareness and love, will help to keep you on the path of dharma and yoga, and in more of a state of health and balance physically and mentally and emotionally. So I'm not going to go way into karma. However, I think it's important to touch on, because we deal with it in yoga, but we also deal with it very much so in Ayurveda. Karma is this evolution of our consciousness, and Dr. Ladd describes karma as being a vipak of your past action. So in Ayurveda, there's these concepts of rasa, virya, and vipak, of your food or your herbs, but also of the senses that you're taking in, right? So the rasa is the taste. It's that first taste of an apple, right? And then the virya is the energy that the apple creates within your body when you're digesting it. It makes you hot, it makes you cold. And then the vipak is that post-digestive effect that can create, what we need to get rid of, right? So the urine, the feces, the sweat is that vipak action at the end of digestion. And Dr. Ladd says that karma is actually our vipak of our past actions from previous lives or from this life, right? Could be from this life, could be previous lives. Could be universal, cosmic, or even environmental karma that we are experiencing too, right? We're born in the United States, we're born in Europe, we're born in, South America, we're born in India, we're born wherever we're born, and that's our karma, and we're sharing collective karma as a result of being born in these states too, right? Or these locations and these families, we have family karma. So there are these three main types of karma. There's lots of karmas, but there's these three main types of karma that we really pay attention to: prarabdha karma, kriyamana, and sanchita. So prarabdha karma is considered to be, this karma that has propelled us into the life that we're in right now. Born into the families, born into whatever, like male, female, or whatever we feel we're supposed to be at that given moment in time, and whatever relationships, whatever location we're born into. This is kind of like the destiny that we're living out right now, right? And we don't have a lot of, according to the study that I've done, we don't have a lot of say in that part of it. Obviously, we were born into whatever family we're born into, and we're dealing with whatever karma, whatever that created within our lives. We're dealing with that. We're living that. Kriyamana is our present karma, the decisions and the actions that we're taking today, which we have a tremendous amount of control over, right? And then we have this sanchita karma, which is karma that, so the best way that I've heard it described, my Guruji and other yogis and saints and sages have described it as a hunter with the bow and arrows, right? So prarabdha karma is that arrow that's already been shot out at the deer, and it's already en route, and the deer is in position, and there's nothing we can do. It's too far away, it's up in the air, there's no way for us to take it back. Kriyamana karma is the arrow that we have in our bow right now, and we can decide to put it down, shoot it a different way, wherever we want to shoot it. So we have a tremendous amount of control over Kriyamana karma. Sanchita are the arrows that we're carrying still in our quiver, right? So those will play out maybe this lifetime, maybe they will become prarabdha. Kriyamana could also become prarabdha based on the decisions that we're making right now. So, but according to yoga and Ayurveda, what we do have control over is our daily living, our daily sadhana, our meditation and yoga practices that help us burn those seeds, those arrows of karma, so that they may not come to fruition, right? So even prarabdha karma, one of the senior monks in my lineage has described that even with prarabdha karma, they say, you know, for instance, if you're very devout and you're trying very hard to live a very balanced, healthy, yogic life, you know, really attempting to live a hitayu, not ahitayu, but hitayu, this perfect, harmonious life, that maybe you can even balance prarabdha karma a little bit by shouting at the deer to move before it gets hit, right? Or going over to the deer and tending to it after it's been hit, or something like that. So there may be things that we can do. And of course, from an Ayurvedic perspective and a Vedic perspective in general, we do things like homa ceremonies, fire ceremonies, mantra, deep meditation practices, tantric practices, to be able to, you know, make really truly genetic changes that are affecting our so-called destiny that we're living in right now. But these are, as I hope you can see, you know, related to the health of an individual. If you're born into a certain state, it may be harder for you to maintain a state of equilibrium of health and well-being. If you're making decisions right now out of, and when I say ignorance, I don't mean that in an unkind way, but out of ignorance of the practices of yoga and Ayurveda and what are good for you, then you may be creating present karma, kriyamana karma, that's continuing the cycle of disease and unhealth within your body. And then of course, the sanchita karma that you may have, you know, saved in the back, if we're not attempting to burn those seeds and achieve moksha in this lifetime, we will play out whatever we've got stored on our backpack, and we will continue to play those out lifetime after lifetime after lifetime if we don't become hyper aware and attempt to live a life of unity. So the definition of health according to Ayurveda: sama doshaha, sama agnicha, sama dhatu malakriyaha, prasanna manendriyamaha, svasta ityabidyate. So this is according to Shushruta Sutrastan 1538. And this describes the definition of health as the balanced doshas, the stability of Agni, proper functioning of the dhatus, which are the tissue systems of the body, proper and timely excretion of mala, or eliminations, so that's urine, feces, veda, which is sweat, and a pleasing state of the soul, senses, and mind. So again, going back to, you know, that earlier slide of how we describe life as a conjunction of the body, mind, and soul, we also see health as being a balanced state of the body, which are the doshas, the digestive system, Agni, The dhatus, which are the tissue systems, excreting what we don't need, toxins from the body, but also very much so a pleasing state of soul, senses, and the mind, right? If we don't have any of those, we don't consider ourselves to be in a balanced state of health. If we are disturbed mentally, emotionally, unfulfilled, living a dharmic life, even if the body is healthy, we don't consider that to be a state of health. Svasta actually means to be situated in the self, large self, meaning Atman, right? It doesn't just mean that, I have six-pack abs and I can climb a mountain or, have energy throughout the day and I'm go, go, go. That doesn't necessarily denote, from an Ayurvedic perspective, complete health. We also have to be living a fulfilling life, taking in through the tanmatras, the things that are of benefit, balancing, pleasing, sattvic in nature, so that the mind, the chitta vrittis, on their own are more harmonious. They're not, a tumultuous wave based on the life that we're living. So, and it also follows that if our doshas are out of balance and our dhatus are improperly nourished and our agni is, not strong, and so we're not digesting food or eliminating mala properly, in that state also, even if we are, practicing yoga and doing these things, it can be very hard to be in this balanced state of health. So svashta rakshanam, to protect, preserve, tend, and upkeep the health and the ease and the comfort and create a sound state of tranquility within the body is one of the practices of Ayurveda, as well as roga shamana, which is disease pacification. So with that in mind, we will begin to discuss Sankhya philosophy. Before I get into Sankhya, does anybody have any questions? Okay, so Sankhya philosophy is this philosophy propounded by sage Kapila, who is an ancient rishi. It's the philosophy of enumeration. Sankhya, at least my understanding, literally means to realize truth. It is a dualistic philosophy. And I know that sounds antagonistic to the practice of yoga and Ayurveda, since we've just gotten done describing, the unity of the body, mind, and spirit with the universal, spirit, Paramatma. But from an Ayurvedic perspective, it was important for us to understand how these physical bodies manifested and why we do appear to be separate, why I appear to be separate from you or from, my other family members or from, the environment around me, the trees and stuff. So how do we appear to be separate? We know the philosophy of Maya, but how did that actually come to be? And so Sankhya is very much a philosophy that Ayurveda has adopted and uses to understand, this dualistic realm that appears real to us, that we are functioning and experiencing every day. It deals with this material world. It is accepted by Ayurveda as one of the Shad Darshan, the 6 philosophies. Ayurveda uses it to understand the manifestation of the individual, the macrocosm and the microcosm, from unmanifest awareness to manifest consciousness, is kind of how this theory of Sankhya, of enumeration of matter, actually comes to be. And it's an equilibrium state to a dynamic movement state from desire. So we'll see, we'll play with all of that. So Sankhya philosophy is an enumeration of 24 tattvas or principles. The 24 tattvas, according to Sankhya, Purush is not considered one of them. And I'll explain more about Purush and Prakriti here in a minute. But Prakriti is the first principle, and Prakriti is really like the primordial will. I've heard it described, the nature, the Shakti energy. She's female, right? She's that creative desire of the universe at a universal level, but also at a individual level. And I'll talk about that here in a minute too. Let me just enumerate these, and then we'll get more into the specifics of them. Prakriti carries within her the trigunas of sattva, rajas, and tamas. Mahat is the second tattva, and the Mahat is universal cosmic intelligence, the organization of the entire universe. Everything in its place is Mahat, where Buddhi is our individual intelligence, right? Of the intelligence of the individual. So those are part and parcel on, Maha scale and a little scale. Ahankar is ego or I former. Manas, you all know what manas is. We consider manas to be the mind, which encompasses many things, including the trigunas of sattva, raja, and tamas. The 5 pancha mahabhutas, well, 5 is pancha. So the pancha mahabhutas, ether, air, fire, water, and earth, are five of the tattvas. The pancha tanmatras, which are sound, touch, form, taste, and odor. The pancha karmendriyas, which are the organs of action, speech, grasping, walking, procreation, and elimination. And the pancha gyanendriyas, which are hearing, touch, vision, taste, and smell. Gyanendriyas are the knowledge senses. So you can find Sankhya philosophy in the Bhagavad Gita. It's talked about in the Bhagavad Purana, in the Upanishads. Shiva Samhita. It's touched lightly in the Ayurvedic texts, but in the Shiva Samhita, the creation of Maya, the elusive world, the Paramatman, universal self, voluntarily desired to create his beings. From his desire to create, avidya, the ignorance, emerged. Therefore, this universe by nature is false, because it came out of avidya, Maya, right? So everything that we see, according to all the yoga philosophies, all the ancient texts from a yogic perspective, this is all illusory. It's ephemeral and therefore not real. The only thing that's real is the unchanging self within inside of us that is not separate from the universal self, but is covered, is veiled in this illusion of creation, Maya, Sankhya philosophy. When there is a voluntary association of pure Brahma with avidya, then there comes out Brahma, the creator. From Brahma comes out ether. From ether comes air. From air comes fire. From fire comes water, and from water comes earth. Thus, the creation is originated. From ether came air, from ether and air combined together came fire, from the combination of ether, air, and fire came water, and from the compound of ether, air, fire, and water came the earth. The quality of ether is sound, so we're going into the Tanmatras now. And this is in the Shiva Samhita. So Shiva Samhita is an ancient text expounded by Lord Shiva to his greatest disciple, his wife, Parvati. The quality of ether is sound, motion, and touch, right? are the qualities of air. The quality of fire is rupa, form, and water is taste, rasa. Truly, it is never otherwise. In this way, ether has one quality, air has two, fire has three, water has four, and earth has five qualities. These are the tanmatras. Form is perceived by the eyes, right? So now we're coming into the Gyanendriyas. Smell by the nose, taste by the tongue, touch by the skin, and sound by the ear. These sense organs perform their fixed action and never otherwise. So this entire universe, movable or unmovable, has come out of intelligence. Mahat. Even though the world may seem true through imagination, or may be non-existent through knowledge, nothing else except pure intelligence alone exists. And at the end of this cycle, the earth is dissolved in water, water into fire, fire into air, and air is absorbed into ether, and ether is dissolved in avidya, the ignorance. Finally, avidya merges into parampara, which is the ultimate Brahman. So it goes on to talk more about Maya and stuff, but I just thought that was a really good description of Sankhya philosophy according to the Shiva Samhit. So my teachers, when I was first studying Ayurveda, they were in the lineage of Gaudiya Vaishnavas. So they very much read in line with the Bhagavad Gita and the Bhagavad Puran. And the way they described this Sankhya philosophy to me was that Shaktiman, who they consider the supreme powerful, and Shakti, the supreme power, which were really just two aspects of a single undivided truth, right? You look at, a lot of times they show like a picture of the yin-yang symbol, right? Because it's really this dynamic unity. It's not separate. They're working together. They do not exist separately from each other, but they are Shakti, Shaktiman. They manifest as Purush, which could be considered like one of the descriptions of Purush is the enjoyer, the male aspect of the universe. He injects time, kala, which we could also say is like a pranic vibration into Prakriti, which is our primordial nature, giving rise to Mahat, this raw, unmanifest cosmos, from which the Trigunas and Ahankara arise. But I want to go back to this Kala for a minute. When we look at the creation of the universe from the backdrop of time, which doesn't exist in a state of unmanifestation, then we can see that creation really is just this cycle of time, this continuity of time, of energy of time that was injected into, through desire, injected into, this energy that then began to create and vibrate and pulsate. And from those vibrations and pulsations that got denser and denser and denser, we get from non-matter all the way down to, form of the Pancha Mahabhutas and such. But prior to that, in no state, there is no time. There's no death, there's no end, there's no beginning, there's no birth, there's nothing before. It's just this pure passive state of awareness. And it isn't until that injection of time comes that anything can follow, right? So it's that amazing point, like when you're in your practice, when you're doing your pranayama or your meditation or whatever, and you're in that state of natural kevala kumbha, not intentional, not counting, just in that state, of nothing, of void. That's the origins of everything. You, me, the plants, the animals, the universe, all the elements, everything. That's the origin of it. And it isn't until we open our eyes and we look at the clock that creation begins again, right? On a universal and on an individual level. So the Trigunas and Ahankara rise from Mahat, which is this universal intelligence. Ego, which is Ahankara, along with Sattva, gives rise to Manas, which is the mind, which is really this organ of thinking, feeling, and willing. Ego in conjunction with Rajas gives rise to Buddhi, which is that individual state of discernment and knowledge. Ego with Tamas manifests as the Pancha Mahabhutas, which are, as we've talked about, ether, air, fire, water, and earth. And the Tanmatras manifest from these elements. The Jnanendriyas and the Karmendriyas manifest from the Tanmatras. So that's according to my teachers who studied, their Vedic scholars of the Bhagavad Gita and the Bhagavad Purana. And if you read the Bhagavad Gita, in the second chapter, Lord Krishna is talking very much with Arjuna about individual Sankhya, right? So we can look at Sankhya as a background for the creation of the entire universe. But we know also that we are microcosms of that universe. So Sankhya is in relation specifically to us as well. When sperm meets ovum, Shakti, Shaktiman, injection, life arises. And from that energetic, vibration of those two potentials coming together, egg becomes impregnated with life, with Jivatman, and body grows in the fetus. The Jivatman that has entered into the egg and sperm when they meet is your individual Jivatman, which is a part of Paratman, that is covered still in this causal body of consciousness of this karma that we were talking about earlier, Sanchita karma, Prarabdha karma, that is propelling you from life to life and death to death and so on and so forth. So in the Bhagavad Gita, he's talking about there is no eternal existence of changeable things, and there is no destruction of eternal things. The reality of both is discerned by the seer of truth. In the visible world, this is Maya, all that you see is imperishable and indestructible soul. No one can destroy the indestructible. So when you look out and you see everything, if you see it as an individual tree or a cat or a dog that is separate from yourself, that's Maya. If you see it as the indestructible self that is the same in you and in everything around us, then that's the truth, right? So undoubtedly, the indwelling soul is imperishable and indefinable, but the body is perishable. Both are foolish who think the soul is capable of killing and who think the soul could be killed, because the soul does not kill and no one can kill the soul. For the soul there is never birth or death. Having once been, never does it cease to be. It is unborn, everlasting, eternal, and ancient. It is not destroyed even when the body is slain. So, of course, the famous, verse 22 in chapter 2 is, just as a man puts on new garments, leaving old ones, similarly, the embodied soul takes on new physical bodies, giving up old, useless ones. So this is truly, an ephemeral manifestation of an eternal truth. The soul is unmanifest, unthinkable, and immutable. Therefore, knowing it as such, do not grieve, right? Because Arjuna is in such a state of despair, not wanting to be at war with family members, with people that he has known his whole life. And Krishna is really just coming to him and saying, there's no such thing as death, right? We're all just living out our karmas. So this is one way of looking at it. I've also studied, thank God, many times with Dr. Ladd, and he loves to talk about Sankhya philosophy. And he talks about it a little bit differently than my teachers at the Ayurvedic school I went to. He says that cosmic prana, this Mata Ishwaran, who's basically the mother of the universe, right? The causative factor of the universe. Purush is just existing in this state of passive awareness in this cosmic prana, right? And then Icha Shakti of prana, which is the willpower of prana, is actually what creates this vibration, which separates from this pranic vibration, separates Purush and Prakrit. From their separation, that's Mahat. Mahat is created from the vibrational separation of a whole, right? And that vibrational prana, that Icha Shakti, that desire, that will, from me, I had a desire to create many, right? That's kind of a famous belief. So Amrita Purush, the cosmic womb, this vibration that is surrounding Purush, from that, they call that Brahmand, the egg, the actual egg of Brahma, is the entire universe is created. So prana is the vibration that separates. Universe is born from the womb of Prakriti. So if Purusha is this passive male entity, we can say male only because, you know, for the purpose of creation, we're having a male energetic and a female energetic, but really it's this passive choicelessness and this energetic desireness, right? Desire. From these two separations, Mahat, or cosmic intelligence, the order of everything in its place in the universe, arises. From that, Ahankar, or ego, identity of I am this planet, I am a star, I am a human, I am a tree. From that order of everything comes the ability to identify with those specific things that are in the order of the universe. From this ahankar, our mind, the trigunas of the mind, which are part and parcel with creation, sattva, rajas, and tamas, together in conjunction with each other, create what we were talking about earlier, the sense faculties, the panchamahabhutas, the organs of action, and the organs of knowledge. So Dr. Ladd says that sattva, who is very much the observer, right? Sattva is the watcher. Rajas is the action of watching. And tamas is the object of observation. So when you combine sattva with rajas, you get the jnanendriya and the karmendriya, which are the knowledge, senses, and the organs of action. When you combine rajas with tamas, who's the observed, you get the tanmatras, which are the sense perceptions that are related to the 5 panchamahabhutas. So from this, that's human form is created, right? Like eventually it's created the entire universe, because the universe is made up of all of these elements, but it's also created human form. So Ayurveda sees this as individually happening. We all are part and parcel with Purush, right? That unmanifest choiceless passive awareness. We all have that within inside of us, covered by this prakriti, which is our doshas when we're born, our physical manifestation and creation of this body. We have buddhi, we have mind, we have ego. We're functioning at the level of the trigunas. We're using sense perceptions to take in this material world around us. And we have all of these faculties of the sense perceptions to be able to digest and assimilate and act within this world. So that's Sankhya philosophy. From what I've learned, from what I've read, from my very limited as a human being attempting to understand things grander than my small self, from me. And I know lots of teachers have more dynamic ways or different ways of describing it. But hopefully I've given a little bit of information that is helpful for you guys to understand Sankhya philosophy. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. So the next thing, so this is going to require, so it's 11:15, we're going till noon, and then we have a lunch break. So this will be perfect. I think we'll spend the rest of this time before lunch doing our Manasika assessment. Let me pull that up. I'd like to go through it with you guys, so in case anybody has any questions, I'm available.
I have one. Can you hear me? I put my hands up, but I don't know if you can.
I'm sorry. I didn't see that.
No problem. I have also multiple things going on at the same time.
Okay, good.
So, two organization questions for me.
Okay.
Do we get the slides later on? Maybe I missed that.
I'm not sure. I'll have to visit with Anna Pilar about that. We'll see.
Okay, cool. I'm not as deep as many of you guys with all the wordings, so I'm a little bit blown away, but that's Ayurveda, so that's pretty awesome. I'm probably can't join the second class today. Is it still possible to hop on tomorrow, or do I think I'm completely losing track then?
I'm not involved in any of that, but I assume anybody can hop on and hop off at any time. Is that correct, Anna Pilar? I don't know if she's listening in or not. But...
Yes, I'm listening. Yeah, you can come in and out as you know, to what your schedule allows. Obviously, we are recording this, so you can go back and listen to the things that you missed, you know, next week. So.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So has anybody ever done a questionnaire to see where you fall with Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas, a Triguna questionnaire, Manasika questionnaire? The way you're going to do this, I took a picture of it. I have PDFs of the other ones that I'm doing, but I didn't have a PDF of this one, and I didn't want to go to Office Depot and get it put on there. So I just took a picture. I think it turned out pretty good. And we can go through the questionnaires. What I recommend you guys do is just get a sheet of paper, put, make 3 columns, Sattva, Raja, Tamas, SRT, and then just mark all that apply. That goes for any of the assessments that you do with me. Mark all that apply. If your spiritual practice is regular sometimes and irregular sometimes, and it goes back and forth. Probably it's just irregular at that point, but there are some that you may feel, you know, you kind of go back and forth between. Just go ahead and mark all that apply for these, and we'll go through them one by one. And then at the end of it, he says at the bottom here that it's just like a dosha test. So if you want to fill it out twice, you first base your choices on what is most consistent over a long period of your life. And then you can fill it out a second time, responding to how you've been feeling recently within the last month or so. His recommendation is to sometimes have a friend ask you the questions and fill this chart out for you. That probably isn't going to be available for us this time, but certainly it is always good to get a different perspective. You know, we don't often see ourselves clearly for a lot of reasons. But after you finish the questionnaires, you add up the number of marks under each column, sattva, raja, and tamas, and this will help you discover your own balance of gunas, your manas prakriti and your manas vikriti. Most people will have one guna predominant, a few will have two gunas approximately equal, but all of you should have some of each guna. I did go to a class with Dr. Ladd where we were filling these out first. He had us fill out a questionnaire, and then it was so funny because a lot of people had trouble with the questionnaire. And so, you know, he was going through and we were all telling him our findings after we filled it out. And a lot of people, you know, were just having a hard time coming up with anything. Some people had 0 tamas, and he said, that's impossible. We all have a little bit of all of them within us. It's impossible to be in manifest creation without all of these within inside of us. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in physical creation form. So yeah, don't answer them as according to what you wish you were. Just answer them honestly, because really at the end of the day, it's really just about knowing yourself. We don't have to compare ourselves to anybody else. We are all always in constant fluctuation based on so many different things in our life, but it's really important to, at least for ourselves, whether we share it with anybody or not is up to us. But for ourselves, it's very important to be as honest as we always can be about ourselves, because that's what helps our evolution, our growth, our practice, our internal well-being. Being honest and truthful with ourselves is where we start with that.
Yeah, can I ask a question?
Yeah. Yes.
So what is my question? So when I get these kinds of questions, so I have my initial response, or I have my nature. And I know that if I take an action, like I have a hot cup of tea, or I go take a power class like I know how I want to be. I know I want to be balanced. So I know how to get there. And so am I responding to I know how to get to balance, or my initial state? I guess my initial state. I just answered my own question.
Yes.
Okay.
No, but it's good because, of course, you know, we all want to be more regular with our spiritual practice. We all want to have, you know, nothing but humanity in mind with our spiritual power. But sometimes we're selfish with it, or sometimes we're destructive with it. And so we have to just be honest with ourselves. And when we answer honestly, then we can say, oh, I know how to get to that point, which is what you're asking, but maybe I'm not actually doing that. And so maybe that's where I need to put my energy. I know what I need to do, but I don't always do that. And so I'm being honest with myself that I'm not achieving certain things because I'm not doing the things I know I need to do. So just to be very honest and not to answer with the knowledge of what we need to do, but just with the truth of where we actually are at. So let's begin we'll go through this once as he was saying, that as it most pertains, like for the most consistent over a long period of your life. So the first question is, your spiritual practice, is it regular, irregular, or never? Your spiritual powers, so we can call them siddhis, right? Is this for humanity? Is it for selfish reasons? Or is it for destructive reasons?
Sorry, I just have a quick question, Leah.
Yes.
So which one are the answers for Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas when you're going down the line?
Just make 3 columns, S, R, T. And then when I'm asking the question, just mark the first one is going to be Sattva, the second one is Rajas, and the third one is Tamas.
Got it.
So, achieving mental clarity. Is it easy to have mental clarity? That's Sattva. Is it difficult or moderate? So Rajas is more moderate and Tamas is more difficult to have clarity. Mental peace. Are we quite often peaceful? That's Sattva. Are we moderately peaceful? Or are we rarely peaceful? That's Tamas.
I'm so sorry to bug, but
No.
please, are we on question 3? Because I think I might have skipped
Right.
over the first one.
Spiritual practice, spiritual power, mental clarity, mental peace. We were on number 4.
Oh, okay. Would you mind repeating the first 2? I'm so sorry.
Sure. So spiritual practice, Sattva is regular, Rajas is irregular, Tamas is never.
Got it.
Spiritual power for humanity is Sattva, Rajas is selfish, Tamas is destructive. Mental clarity, Sattva is easy to have clarity, Rajas moderate clarity, Tamas difficult to have clarity. Mental peace, Sattva, we are quite often peaceful, Rajas, we are moderately peaceful, Tamas, we are rarely peaceful. Satisfaction, so santosh, right? Contentment. We are usually satisfied, Sattva. Rajas, we are partially satisfied. Tamas, we are seldom satisfied. Our behavior. Sattva, we are gentle in our behavior. Rajas, we are aggressive in our behavior. And Tamas, we are destructive in our behavior. Of course, that pertains to not only, relationships, but ourselves. Are we gentle and loving to ourselves? Are we aggressive to ourselves in our actions and what we do? Are we destructive to our own emotional well-being? Commitment. Sattva is total commitment to things. Rajas is partial commitment. Tamas is never. Concentration. Sattva, it's good. Rajas, it's fluctuating. Tamas, it's poor. Attentiveness. Sattva is good. Rajas is fluctuating. Tamas is poor or careless.
What was it again?
The last one,
Yes.
poor or careless, or the whole question?
Poor or careless? No, the whole question, please.
The whole question is attentiveness.
Attentiveness. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. Good is Sattva, Rajas is fluctuating, Tamas is poor or careless for attentiveness. Willpower, that's our own personal Icha Shakti, is good for Sattva, is variable for Rajas, and low for Tamas.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that one again? Because it cut in and out for me.
Willpower.
Thanks.
Willpower is good for Sattva, variable for Rajas, and low for Tamas. Knowledge, good for Sattva, variable for Rajas, and low for Tamas. Memory, easy to remember, sattva. Difficult to remember for rajas. Tamas is poor and holds a grudge. Cleanliness, saucha. Good for sattva. Moderate for rajas. And poor for tamas. Sexual activity. Infrequent and spiritually based for sattva. Variable for pleasure, rajas. And excessive with lust for tamas. Donations, charity, seva. For sattva, it's anonymous. For rajas, it's occasional with name attachment. And tamas is rare, only for gain. Love. Sattva, it's universal with no expectation. Rajas, it's selfish with expectation. And tamas, it's obsessive. Emotions. Sattva have honest emotions. Rajas have denial, right? We deny our emotions. And tamas suppress their emotions, suppression. You know, and some of these things, honestly, we're taught to do, right? So it's really a conscious practice to recognize these things within us and to work on setting them to a more balanced state for overall health and well-being. So attachments are rarely and brief for sattva, are moderately frequent for rajas, and are often and long-standing for tamas. Fear is rarely and brief for sattva, moderately frequent for tamas or for rajas, and often and long-standing for tamas. Anger, rarely and brief for sattva, moderately frequent for rajas, often and long-standing for tamas. Greed, rarely and brief for sattva, moderately frequent for rajas, often and long-standing for tamas. Confusion, rarely and brief for sattva, moderately frequent for rajas, often and long-standing for tamas. Hate, rarely and brief for sattva, moderately frequent for rajas, often and long-standing for tamas. Grief, rarely and brief. This is like turning into a poem. Rarely and brief for sattva, moderately frequent for rajas, often and long-standing for tamas. Depression, rarely and brief for sattva, moderately frequent for rajas, often and long-standing for tamas. Pride, little for sattva, moderate for rajas, and much for tamas. Perception, clear for sattva, agitated for rajas, faulty for tamas. Facial expressions, calm, contented, and happy for sattva, mixed, agitated for rajas, dull and gloomy for tamas. Eyes, calm and clear for sattva, restless and active for rajas, dull and gloomy for tamas. Speech, clear, calm, and peaceful for sattva, fast, restless, and agitated for rajas, slow and monotonous for tamas. Diet. Vegetarian, loves all 6 tastes in moderation, 1 to 2 meals a day for sattva. Rajas, eats meat sometimes, loves hot spicy food, 2 to 3 meals a day. Tamas, heavy meat eater, sweets, heavy foods, loves sweets, heavy food in excess, 4 to 5 meals a day. Digestion, good, normal for sattva. Variable for rajas. Poor, slow for tamas. Elimination, regular for sattva. Irregular for rajas. Sluggish for tamas. Alcohol, drug use, none for sattva. Social, occasional for rajas. Frequent for tamas. Sleep, light, brief, satisfying for sattva. Interrupted, disturbed, insufficient, or unsatisfying for rajas. Heavy, deep, and excessive for tamas. Upon waking, happy and fresh for sattva. Disturbed, worried for rajas. Drowsy, heavy feeling for tamas. Physical activities, movements with awareness for sattva. Hyperactive movements for rajas. Slow, sluggish, habitual movements for tamas. Exercise. Gentle daily exercise, yoga, walking, swimming for sattva. Aggressive, occasional exercise, like jogging for rajas. Or heavy, difficult exercise, like weightlifting or hates to exercise for tamas. Does anybody have any questions?
When the slideshow does get uploaded to the drive, hoping that it does, or assuming that it does, can you in this slide type those underneath so that we have those and can reference, I guess, like reference them, 6 months, 12 months down the road?
Type, what do you want me to type? Can you guys see this that I've pulled up? Oh, you guys can't see this. Can you see the guidelines for determining your mental constitution? Oh, I pulled it up, but I guess I need to switch screens. Hang on just a second. La, 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 la. Here we go. I apologize for that. I really thought that you guys could see that because I was sharing my screen, and I guess you have to like go to the next thing each time you share something. So can you guys see it now? Yes? Okay.
It's there now. So if this could be attached to the drive and like the files or like an attachment and a link, that would be awesome.
Do you mind scrolling down for one moment? I just need to
Sure.
see one that I missed.
Yes. Like all the way down, or?
It was next to eyes. Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So did you guys do this as like over the long term, like what's been longest term in your life? Is that how everybody's been doing this? Cool. So this is your manas prakriti. And then of course that can change. Obviously, as you can see, these things can change depending upon, any number of things. If we are, in a state of like let's say like a family member is passing, right? Or we're having relationship issues, or things at work are different or in transition, or, you know, unstable in any way. That instability of these major life transitions, whether they're in your family or in your own body, can create changes in, you know, your emotions and how you do things, you know, how you eat, your elimination, your digestion can change, how you sleep can change, your practice can change. You know, sometimes in times of big transition, sometimes we can deepen and strengthen our spiritual practice, but sometimes that becomes one of the hardest things to maintain. But, you know, we started this whole class today talking about, from an Ayurvedic perspective, how we can remain in a state of health during epidemics in the world. And I was listening, I go every year to the NAMA conference, which is the National Ayurvedic Medical Association, and this year they had it online, right? Which was actually really cool because I don't go every year, but I'd like to go every year, but they have it every year is my meaning. And I wasn't going to go to this one this year because I had been to the one the year before and I couldn't afford to go to this one, but they had it online, so I was able to attend. And you know, it was right after COVID had come out. It was in April and COVID had just really, you know, gone crazy in March. And so everything was online, and these really just divine spiritual leaders in the realms of Ayurveda and yoga were sharing such loving guidance for all of us. And I can remember Maya Tiwari saying that, you know, quarantine has been practiced in ancient civilizations since the dawning of time. Quarantine is actually a time to retreat inside, right? To practice pratyahara, to strengthen our Icha Shakti, to develop our spiritual practice deeper and with more intention for longer periods. You know, so this removal of the ability to go out and do whatever we want to do all the time, which is such a human condition in this modern age, could really have been such a momentous chance for all of us, for humanity, to simplify and go inside and strengthen our understanding of self, our practice of, you know, compassion and love, our practices of yoga and Ayurveda. So, you know, oftentimes when there's huge transitions and things change for a moment, everything's up in the air and we can feel very rajasic or even tamasic. But hopefully, you know, we're now, what, like 7 months into it or something, you know, when things are rebalancing, unbalancing, like still in flux constantly. But hopefully, you know, we can collectively use this as a time to develop, you know, practices that are going to carry us through no matter what ends up happening, right? No matter
Excuse me, Leah, I'm sorry. Can you go down after love?
Yes, sorry.
And Leah, I think we have a hand raised. Winnie has her hand raised. She has a question.
Sure.
Yes, I had a question about exercising because it says like yoga. I do yoga and I like run, I jog. So like, where would I fall?
I would mark both.
Okay, that's what I did. But I just wanted to make sure I thought it was one or the other.
No, I would mark both. If you do yoga and you also, you know, jog or do weightlifting, I would mark all three.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, because you have to remember, again, as it says in this, and as we all know, we all have all of these qualities within inside of us, all three of them. We are not operating without tamas. We are not operating without rajas, and we are not operating without sattva. So, you know, we're fluctuating depending upon activities, decisions we're making all the time. So yeah, apply to you for sure.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Does anybody else have any questions? I haven't been looking at the chat because I thought for some reason, I'm sorry, Anna Pilar, I thought for some reason you were doing the chat. Yeah, if you guys want to do it again to determine current tendencies, please do. I'll leave it up. I don't think I need to read through it again, but just tell me when you want me to move down further. But yeah, and it'll be interesting for you guys. And if anybody wants to share, I'm happy to visit with anybody about any of this stuff. I know for myself, every time I read this, you know, it's a chance again for svadhyaya, for me to take a look at the things that that maybe I've let fall away, or maybe that I've fallen into that I have not recognized, right? Mental peace is right now hard for me to find. Even with a practice, even with this beautiful knowledge that's laid before us, it can be really hard for me to find still. And so, and I know the reasons why, you know, there are reasons. We all have reasons why we fall into any of these categories, but once you understand the reasons, then maybe you can go through and work deeper in those areas to find more balance. The other thing that I wanted to put forth with this assessment is that a lot of literature and teachings out there guide us towards leading a purely sattvic life. And of course, the goal is to live in more of a state of equanimity and balance for our health and well-being. However, one of my teachers, Dr. Lad, explained that we need all three of these gunas to function in this material world. We need tamas to rest and relax and sleep and build. It's anabolic in nature, right? It's the energy of anabolism. And we need that too. We don't need to always be going in the state of rajas. We need that time for rest. And we also need to have that balance of sattva so that when we're in a state of work or in a state of rest, we can also come into that state of equanimity. And he describes sattva, again, I was talking about it in Sankhya philosophy, as the observer, right? As that witnessing awareness. And rajas as the act of observing, which we are constantly doing through the eyes, through the nose, through all the sense perceptions in the mind, right? And he describes tamas as that object that we're observing. And when the three of those merge, not that we are getting rid of any of them, but when they all merge together in one, where you are not the observer or the object or the observation, you just are. That's that state of paramatma that we're all looking for. But so it's important to recognize that observer within inside of us, recognize that we're observing, you know, a lamp, a window, a tree, and that we may be classifying those or identifying those as external from us, but they're really not. That's that maya, that's that illusion that we are separate entities and beings, when in truth we are We just are, right? We're not anything or anyone. We just are. And it's in coming to those states that we more often that we can remain in, equanimity and peace and balance, and organ functions properly balanced, mind, emotions properly balanced, doshas balanced, elements within us. I'm going to move this up from love so that you guys can keep answering them. Look at the chat. If anybody has any questions right now, go ahead, jump in.
Hi, can
Hello.
you scroll down just a little bit more, please?
Yep. Is that good?
Awesome.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hello?
Hello.
Hey, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. Sorry. Oh, here we go. Okay, so I did my survey for right now because I just feel like I'm like in just this very transitory period, as I would assume that a lot of students would be at this point and just taking this class. But like what do I do with this information? Like just sort of like contemplate it, like sort of look at the categories and try, like what is the balance that I'm looking for, or like how do I really use this information from this?
Thank you. That's a really good question. So, so the trigunas are the states of our mind, right? They're the states of our emotions and of our daily, relationships and activities that we're doing. And so this questionnaire, the reason I'm doing this now before I get further into the characteristics of it is that I really kind of want you guys to be mulling over, yes, the columns, what you came out higher in, and then later on this afternoon, I'm going to go into, what those qualities look like in an individual and what we can do to balance them. So, so it's a good question, and I think I'm going to answer it as we go further into the presentation. But for right now, yeah, I mean, just take a look at it. If you're dull and gloomy a lot of the time, I mean, I'm just looking at it right now myself, and you look over in the Thomas section, and if you're dull and gloomy a lot of the time, that may be something that you need to ponder. Why? What's creating that facial expression, and for your eyes to be in that state? Is it work? Is it a relationship? Is it the state of the world we're living in? What is it? And then we'll talk about ways that we can move from these states of tamas to rajas and rajas to sattva later on in the presentation. But, we're all going to have areas of tamas, and some of those are just going to be, natural things that are going to happen throughout our life. Some of them may be situations that we really do need to take a look at and see if there are ways that we can find greater state of balance through certain Ayurvedic and yogic practices. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Are there, without you having to say too much and trying to be, patient for the next lecture, are there certain Ayurvedic meditations based on each three of these, Ratva, or whatever they are, Sattva and the SRV? Like, are there like okay, like this is a tamas meditate, or did they, like, the rishis, like, have those?
I don't know of any specific meditations for Sattva, Raja, and Tamas. Meditation's goal in general is to bring us to a state of Sattva. So any meditation we do, you know, I say goal. Meditation is not supposed to have a goal, but when you enter into practices that are guiding you to states of meditation, those are sattvic practices. So they would all be, you know, prescribed for people, you know, to maintain sattva or to pull out of states that are more tamasic or rajasic. And I do have some activities, some meditations and practices that are good for, later in the presentation, you'll see how these 3 qualities relate to the doshas. And some of you who know Ayurveda and the doshas might already be able to see how these relate, you know, more to Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. And so when you do the things that bring the doshas in balance, oftentimes you're also bringing into balance these qualities of Sattva, Raja, and Guna in yourself. So we'll get into more of that. But it is 8 minutes before we're taking lunch break. And so does anybody have any questions about this?
I don't necessarily have a question, but in relation to what Efitz was just saying, that I think what you're maybe trying to get at is certain mantras or certain vibrations that you could use to heal these certain aspects of yourself. Is that what you were trying to?
Yeah, I wondered if, like, you know, there was anything, just like any of the, like, the Vedas or like ancient texts that, like, you know, really, I don't know, I guess talked about like how they contemplated those things, or like what, I don't know, because I've never read them, and this is my
It's
first.
a lot to read.
Yeah, this is my first, really, like, I mean, I've obviously heard of, like, you know, I know very little about it. It seems like such a vast subject.
It's a huge study, definitely. What I would recommend is, I typed it in the chat earlier that I'm reading Perfect Health by Deepak Chopra. And in his book, he talks about different bija seed mantras that are related to your chakras. So if you have the time in your personal study, you could take a look at, like, where your hate, your grief, your depression, your pride, what chakra that is deficient, where that is hitting you. And then you can go to those bija seed mantras and sort of incorporate them into your meditations and chant them 108 times like we did this morning to get centered. And you'll start to see some change. Yeah, that's what I would say if you're curious on, like.
Yeah. Can I look that information up on the internet without buying that book? I spent so much money. I have so much something. I'm like, oh gosh.
I will type my email in the chat, and you can send me an email, and I'll try and get over any information, because I can take pictures or whatever if you have some limitations. As far I understand, this is a huge study. The book is here. I'll hold it up so you guys can see it. Interested? It's Perfect Health by, sorry, there's sort of a glare, Deepak Chopra. If you guys are curious, and then I will type my email in there for you.
Cool, thanks.
So that's actually a really good practice before we go to lunch. Anybody that wants to, it'd be really good to just get in a comfortable meditative posture, whether that's in a chair, up against a wall, on your mat, with a pillow. And we are going to do the bija mantras for each chakra. And then we'll go to lunch. So you're in your comfortable meditative posture with your spine straight. Your chin is a little bit down. Eyes are closed. If you're comfortable, you can lift the eyebrows, raising more awareness to Sahasrara, the crown chakra. At rest, your tongue can be curled up in Khechari Mudra. Hands can be resting in Gyan Mudra on the knees. We're slowly bringing awareness to the breath. We've been doing a lot of talking, a lot of terminology that is maybe new for a lot of you. We're just going to let all of that go right now. Just focusing on the breath coming in through the nostrils, the sensation coming up through the nose, touching Ajna Chakra, touching Sahasrara, coming down through Vishuddha, Anahata, Manipura, resting at Nabi. If you can, have a natural hold at Nabi, Kevala Kumbhak. And then exhaling from Nabi, which is the navel region, back up through Anahata, Vishuddha, touching Sahasrara, Ajna, and coming out the nostrils, merging with Amrit Parush, cosmic prana. There may be a natural hold. Inhaling and exhaling comfortably, consciously, with awareness. You can bring your awareness down to Muladhara Chakra. If it helps to do a gentle Mula Bandh, which is a constriction at the perineum, just a gentle constriction to feel where Muladhara originates. Breathing normally. We can do 4 Bija mantras for each chakra. The Bija mantra for Muladhara is LAM, L-A-M. LAM, 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 LAM. Holding the energy there. Breathing normally. Releasing Mula Bandha if you had a gentle restriction of Mula Bandha. Bringing your awareness up to Svadhisthana, which is right above the pubic bone, all the way back to the spine. Chanting the Bija mantra for Svadhisthana, which is VAM, 4 times. VAM, 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 VAM. Holding the energy of VAM in Svadhisthana. Breathing normally with awareness. Bringing your attention to Manipur chakra, right at the navel, right at the umbilical, all the way back to the spine. At these points of awareness, you may feel heaviness sensation, pulsing, energy. Chanting Ram 4 times at Manipur. Ram, 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 Ram. Holding Ram at Manipur. Bringing your awareness to Anahata Chakra, right above the diaphragm, on the sternum, in between the breasts, all the way back to the spine. Having a sensation, pulsing, Hridyai Agni. We can chant the Bija mantra Yam 4 times. Yam, 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 Yam. Holding Yam at Hridyai Agni Anahata. Bringing awareness to Vishuddha Chakra, right at the throat, all the way back. Chanting Hum 4 times at Vishuddha Chakra. Hum, 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 hum. Holding hum at Vishuddha. Purification center of emotions, the Chitta Vritti residing in Anahata. Bringing awareness to Ajna Chakra, right in between the eyebrows, about 3 inches back. Cave of Brahma. There are 2 Bija mantras for Ajna Chakra, Sham and Kasham. We'll do 4 of each. Sham, 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 Sham. Ksham, 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 Ksham. Opening up the inner eye of intuition and awareness. You may see color sensation. Light vibration. Bringing your awareness to the crown of the head. Adipati. Brahma. Connection between Ajna and Sahasrara. energy coming out the top of the physical head. Om is the Bija mantra for Sahasrara. We can chant Om 4 times. Om, 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 Om. Slight constriction at Mula Bandha, keeping awareness on Sahasrara, connecting Muladhara and Sahasrara. Resting on the pillar of the spine, floating. Oh. Spine is your tether. It's an energetic tether. You're floating weightless. In this state, you have nothing to do, nothing to accomplish, just be. Let this Shakti, this energy, hold you, operate from here. You are the vibration. You are the light. You are the Om you hear. And you can go and be this anytime you want. If you still are gently constricting Muladhara, you can really slowly begin to gently come back to the body. In your breath. The vibration that's manifested into physical form. The pulsation that has become creation. Begin to take deeper breaths and slowly decide or not to come back into this illusory reality we are participating in. Gently opening the eyes when you're ready. So that was just a very short chakra meditation that you can do with the Bija mantras. Maybe later this week we'll do chakra Veda and pranayam. But feel free in your own practice of this to stay in these states at each chakra as long as you want, right? There's visualizations of colors and shapes at each chakra that we can talk about too. Maybe after lunch we can talk about that. But these meditations are for you to have whenever you want to go there. You can go there. Yeah, after lunch we'll go over visualizations you can do along with the Bija mantras at each chakra. And then later in the week, we can go into chakra Veda and pranayam, which is a really beautiful practice of breath.
Should we convene about 15 minutes later then, ladies
Oh.
and gents? Yep, since it's 12, almost 12:15, should we come back at 1:15 or do you want to come back at 1?
1:15 is great.
Right, everybody. I'm going to stop the recording. We'll see you back at 1:15. Thank you.